President Donald J. Trump is now an old hand at this. I think he's in his third day of office here. So, things are finally starting to settle in. Okay, nothing's settling into. Probably won't for the entire 4 years. But man, the first 48 hours has been quite a blitz of so many different things. We couldn't, I don't think any show could adequately cover the number of even just the executive orders that have been signed, each of which has impact on some aspect of our life here. But Larry Johnson, one of our favorite folks here we have on this channel here, former CIA analyst, author there at sonar21.com, which you see on the screen right there. And in fact, that's what got my attention, why we wanted to have Larry on with us today, because he's talking about the first 48 hours, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Trump. The things that he's done. And Trump is a disruptor by nature, and that's one of the reasons he was brought into office, and he is not disappointed with that disruption tag at the beginning here. But we're going to see sometimes disruptions is good, sometimes it's not so good, and how it actually manifests. So we would like to bring your analyst skills to bear on some of this, Larry, today. And so let's just jump right in. So they had that article up there a second ago, and one of the things that you're talking about is, and by the way, as we go through a lot of this stuff, I'm going to ask some of this, is this good? Is this bad? Is this ugly? How does that fall into the category here? So, let's first of all start off with the Hunter Biden laptop story, which seems to never die. It seems to never go away. But now Trump has taken action here at the beginning, and he has taken away the security clearance of the former officials who signed on to this letter, which claimed all kinds of things in the past, and now he's taken away. So first of all, if you could kind of explain to us what that letter was, what was behind it, and what is the significance of this security clearance issue?
Sure. And full disclosure up front, I've been old friends with Steve McIsaac, the father of John Paul McIsaac, the laptop repairman. And on the night that the story broke, Steve called me and asked me to get on the phone with his son, JP, and I helped JP because Rudy Giuliani completely dropped the damn ball in protecting JP. So when that laptop story came out, it was real. There was no foreign entanglement or involvement. What these disgusting, despicable former members of the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency did was they were part of an orchestrated plot by Anthony Blinken. Ever heard of him? So Mr. Blinken went into the CIA and got them to basically say, hey, it's okay. And so these 51 folks signed a letter where they didn't claim outright that this was a Russian disinformation campaign. They said it had all the earmarks, the hallmarks. All this was to cast shade and doubt on a story that was legitimate, that was truthful. One of the 51, Steve Hall, he was a 22-year-old kid in my career trainee class so we entered on duty in the same class back in September 1985. He got in because his daddy had already been part of the CIA. This was part of the Friends and Family program. But, shame on Steve and the rest of these folks for indulging in this kind of political activism. This was a direct attempt to sabotage 2020 election, which it did in part. Several of these people, a few of them are no longer involved with classified work as contractors, maybe John Brennan, but Brennan, Hayden, you've got a lot of very senior people that attached their names to that letter. They've had their clearances pulled. They're not getting briefings anymore. More importantly, though, I think a significant number of these people who have contracts with, whether it's Booz Allen, SAIC, all the Beltway bandits you can name, this is going to hurt them in the pocketbook. Good. They deserve it. Oh, and let's not forget, he pulled the clearances for John Bolton as well.
Yeah. I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But if you could just kind of explain to us how it normally works, because it seems like, I'll just use myself for example. When I retired from the Army in 2015, I think that technically my security clearance, which was a secret at that time, I guess it would continue to be active if I was if I came back into a position or anything, but I had no access to any kind of secret information. But why do they not go away when you leave service, whatever you were doing?
Well, you leave service, but then if you've lined up another job. So, for example, when I left the Department of State in 1993, and then was signed up to start working on scripting terrorism exercises for the Joint Special Operations Command, for JSOC and for SOCOM. So my clearances were passed to this contractor, and the contractor had a SCIF, a secured classified information facility, that they would hold all the top secret. At the time was still TS, Special Compartmented Information, SCI, with a bunch of other letters, TK, U, etc. So the contractor would hold it. The clearances would still be active. They were usually run through DOD. And so I maintained my clearances for 23 years, even after I left the CIA and left State Department. So it's very, I guarantee you, probably 60% of the guys and gals on this list are still using their clearances to make some money, and Trump's hit them in the pocketbook. Good. Maybe this will teach intelligence officers. It's one thing to stand up and put your neck out there on truthful information. When there is a legitimate issue of national security, put it out there, take the risk. That's what John Kiriakou did when he came out and was a whistleblower on the torture program. And you look at what happened to him. They went after him. They prosecuted him. These cats lied their asses off. They misrepresented the laptop. In fact, instead of staying silent and staying out of it, they got directly involved because this was about burnishing the credentials of Joe Biden and savaging Donald Trump. And we've now seen 4 years of the disaster, the damage inflicted on the foreign policy front by the likes of Joe Biden, thanks to the enabling activities of these former intelligence officials.
Wow. So I guess really, when you get down to it, that's actually a pretty tame and a mild retaliation or response for what was done here, because I guess it was simultaneously we're trying to make people not believe that Biden had anything to do with anything. It was all made up, and that it was the Russians trying to help Trump. So it was like a double whammy, and just a gross a misuse and abuse of power, looks like.
Yeah. But it's let's not underestimate getting cut off. But these people had, I guarantee you, they have contracts, and those contracts are contingent upon them having security clearances where they could go back into their former agencies. They can't do that now. And all of a sudden, hey, your reason for being in Washington, gone away. Trump's cut them off at the knees.
Well, I certainly hope that in addition to just issuing that executive order to strip them of their security clearance, I hope they actually say something about this so that the public is able to see, exactly what was going on, so they see why this is an appropriate action here. I want to kind of have a quick break here because Gary has just alerted me that there's a new action by Trump, which will fit right into our theme here, that he is sending troops. Pentagon is sending up to 1,500 active duty troops to help secure the U.S. Mexico border. I wonder if you can kind of, first of all, let's just look at the legality of this, because there's all this, people hear this term Posse Comitatus a lot when anytime you're talking about using U.S. troops on American soil. And apparently, or at least the common belief is that means that they can't do much of anything in our country. But I wonder if you can explain to us a little bit about what is Posse Comitatus, and does it or does it not apply to this situation?
Actually, I'm really not up to speed on Posse Comitatus. What I do know is we've got these various military commands scattered around the world. NORTHCOM is one of those. Then NORTHCOM, what does that deal with? Oh, that's North America Command. It is the one, it's the out of EUCOM, AFRICOM, INDOPACOM, SOUTHCOM, all these comms that are scattered around the world. The only one that's supposed to be dedicated to defending the United States, to using military force to defend our borders, because the Posse Comitatus is you don't want the military being used against American citizens. However,
okay.
my understanding is that you can deploy the military force to stop a foreign invasion.
To protect American citizens.
Yes.
So
And so that's what I think that's the key part to this decision. They could also,
Gary, if I could, by the way, Bess, we're continuing forward. If you see any comment by Trump or anything, just please don't hesitate to break in with that. Okay, I got you down there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a look, though, Larry, at the utility of this. Does this make sense? Is this something that could actually help, or is it just something that looks good?
Well, right now it's in the look good category. I mean, it's a long border, and it's being overwhelmed at several points. But it establishes the precedent to put these troops out there to basically reinforce Customs and Border Police, the CBP folks. They have been overwhelmed, and really they've gone for the last 4 years where they've been prevented from doing their jobs. And the hordes, just the thousands of people that are swarming the border points trying to get across. So I hope that this gets expanded from 1,600 to 16,000. You know, you could use it'd be nice to have three or four brigades out there running around trying to reinforce and to help shore up.
And what would they physically do on the border, active troops?
I think they could actually establish defensive perimeters and secure points that anybody that would come across a particular point would be taken into custody and then turned over to CBP. So they would not have a law enforcement, but they would be able to apprehend people. They wouldn't be able to arrest. That would have to be carried out. But, one of the ways to deal with that is you establish a liaison officer from CBP to each of those units. So you place 3 or 4 CBP officers in each of the U.S. military units, that the military provides the manpower for grabbing the people. CBP provides the legal authority for processing them and booting them out.
Well, I got to say, at least the headline Gary's showing right there, which I assume is probably just popped here. That's I'm for that. I think that I would 10 times rather see our military doing something like this instead of like, I don't know, Syria, where they're just sitting out there wondering if they're going to get bombed by another ISIS related or Iranian related, whatever, something that has nothing to do with our national security. At least down here, they would be doing something that actually keeps us safe.
I'd like to know who the commander of NORTHCOM is, because when you think back to your Army days and you're wanting to get promoted, man, if you wanted to get, fast track it to the top, you wanted to be in CENTCOM. That's where the action was. Maybe secondary that
Lloyd Austin was in CENTCOM.
Or Indo-PACOM. Yeah, there was some action there. EUCOM, sure. Got NATO, Ukraine. NORTHCOM? Come on. That's where you go get a hammock and you stretch it between 2 trees and someone brings you a daiquiri from time to time to suck on. No, nothing going on there. Not now, boy. I tell you what, that headquarters out in Colorado Springs, and I've done some counterterrorism exercises out there as well. They are spun up, I guarantee you. And now all of a sudden they're having to activate units that have never, they've gone through these exercises where they've activated them actually, but never really done it for real. Now they're doing it for real.
Yeah, and we'll see how that's gonna work out long term. I mean, that could, presumably, because I know that an unknown to a lot of people is that in our past we have used the troops to secure the border. It's not anything that's unprecedented. There's a lot of people, especially on the left, who don't want anything to do with this, and they don't even want to use it. They try to make it sound like it's something that's just so far from any kind of normal usage of the military, and we've never done it, blah blah blah. But actually, we have. And, I know this is a little bit off topic from what we were talking about. I just kind of want your assessment, especially as that you've done counterterrorism stuff in the United States and you've been involved with that before. But it seems like whatever immigration policy you want, however many people can come in, whatever categories, that's all fair game that politicians can talk about until they're blue in the face. But whatever they decide, at some point, there's going to be a law passed, and they're going to say, here's the law of the land, et cetera. It seems to me it shouldn't even be an issue of controversy to say that whatever that law is, we're going to use law enforcement, whether that's federal, state, or local, to enforce the law. And that means Nobody comes across the border but those that we allow to come across, and in the way that we come across, and in the way that we deem they can come across. Why is there such a resistance to actually securing the border by so many in America?
Because I believe that they want to destroy America. They have, there's no love for this nation, no love for this country as a republic. You and I have both traveled extensively in various countries around the world. And, one of the first things you do when you go into those countries is you have to fill out a card saying, where are you staying? How long are you going to be there? And if it's a country where you don't need a visa, you still got a time limit on how long you can stay there. And then when you go to leave the country, you go through the same process. They check you in and check you out. The United States is the only country I've been in where you come in and they don't check you in, or they don't really check you out. And then so it's easy to come here and blend into society. And it'd be one thing if, there's several problems with this whole illegal immigration. And one of the reasons it's been allowed to thrive and proliferate is because there are people on both sides of the political aisle, Republicans and Democrats, making money off of this. They take a lot of the kids and the juveniles, the teenagers, and they get stuck into chicken farms, putting eggs in egg crates, pig farms, turkey farms. I mean, it's just they are used in jobs that most Americans don't want. They are paid sub-minimum wage. They don't get any health care. They're basically exploited. It's a new form of servitude. And, we've been willing to overlook that. That's coming to an end right now. And these companies, many of them are politically connected, well connected, on both sides of the aisle. That's the thing to emphasize. This is not just a partisan issue. That's why it's been allowed to proliferate. It's all about the money.
Actually, it was talking a couple of months back to a certain individual here in D.C. Who's well connected and to both parties, and he told me that in his view, immigration always stays up because it's a big issue that stirs up the base on both sides, and they can point to all different kinds of stuff, but neither side actually wanted the immigration crisis solved, because many on the left, because they said, that can get us votes in some places, which still to this day is very curious to me, why we have laws that allow people who aren't citizens, who don't have ID cards, to vote. I don't get that. But then on the right, there's lots of business owners who benefit from some of the financial things you just talk about there, and they don't want it solved, et cetera. But that leaves a big national security hole in the middle that both sides are helping to enable. And I'd like to see that get shut off. And look, if somebody's here doing a job, pay them fair wages. Be fair about it. I mean, there's no reason not to exploit that. I think that's a terrible thing to do. You can still make money doing it the right way. So that's all I'm saying. And you can keep us safe. So if you're one of those on the left that just wants people to come in for votes, well, I'm out on that too. So we're going to shut that deal down. We're going to make sure that the country is a law-abiding citizen that takes care of people. That would be cool, even if it seems unlikely.
Yep. No, I agree.
All right. Sorry. We got that was kind of diverted there. Let's jump back to what we were talking about here. We were talking about Trump having cut the security clearance for a lot of people who had anything to do with that Biden laptop disaster. But one of the other specific officials who was for a different reason was the mustachioed one, John Bolton. So and the Hill is reporting today, the President Trump on Tuesday explained why he revoked former National Security Advisor John Bolton's security clearance, saying, "I think there was enough time. We take a job, you take a job, you want to do a job, you're going to have security on people and for the rest of their lives. Why should we?" Trump said when he asked by reporters. So he didn't really get into any details here. What is your view on why he revoked Bolton's clearance in particular?
Well, Bolton wrote a book in which he divulged a variety, classified information, and that it was an attack on Donald Trump. So you can take a shot at the king, man. You get the headshot, or don't take the shot, and it's his own fault. Bolton has been part of the problem. I've got again, I have personal animus towards the man. one of my good friends, Fulton Armstrong. Fulton was a national intelligence officer for Latin America. Fulton was one of my mentors initially at the CIA. He had the Honduras account before me, and then he moved on to Nicaragua. But Bolton accused my friend Fulton of being a Cuban agent. And Bolton got permission to got the U.S. Postal Service to start opening Fulton's private mail. He violated his rights as an American citizen. So Bolton is a tyrant. He's an authoritarian. He was also a neighbor of mine, lived 2.5 blocks up the street from me. So I did miss my chance one day when he was out shoveling snow. I could have, driven by, hit him with a snowball or something.
Oh man!
But it's just, Bolton's a bad guy. He's not an honorable, good American. He is all about stirring up war and conflict, and has no second thoughts whatsoever about violating the constitutional rights of other American citizens.
It's funny. I think it was in 2021. No, it must have been before that. At one point during his time in the Trump administration, he got somebody's security clearance revoked, and he was very open about saying, "Yeah, I did, and that's exactly right what he get." And then now that he tweets out after this one that he's so disappointed that President Trump stooped to this kind of thing here. When he himself uses it without compunction. But I guess that speaks to the kind of character you're talking about.
Yeah, no, he could dish it out, but he can't take it, And that's the other thing is Trump also pulled a Secret Service detail. I wasn't even aware he had a Secret Service detail.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to wonder. Why does he get a Secret Service detail? How does he rate that?
Yeah, they used the story that the Iranians want to kill him.
There could be some legitimacy to that because
I think the Iranians
and all these
Iranians are smart enough to realize how toxic he is. He's better off to them alive than dead. Don't make him a martyr.
Yeah. Of course, I'm not for anybody being killed like that. So I want him to be safe, even though I dislike nearly everything he stands for. But honestly, if you know how deeply he's been in bed with the MEK, which is a mortal enemy of the Iranian state, making big speeches and all this kind of stuff.
He's he's a big enabler of terrorism. On the one hand, he condemns Hamas and Hezbollah. They're the gross terrorist outfits. But then he embraces a group that actually carries out terrorist attacks and kill. So as long as it's killing people that we like, it's okay. Yeah. I come at it more, hey, I'm against the use of violence against civilians regardless, okay?
Yeah.
Across the board. That shouldn't be done. And so that means I will oppose Hamas killing civilians, Hezbollah killing civilians, MEK killing civilians, and all these groups that the United States is backing, including ISIS, al-Nusra, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. On the one hand, we've got this whole scam going in the United States. Got all these terrorist cells. They're running around the United States. They're getting ready to rise up and attack. And I'm going, and who are they? Oh, it's ISIS. Oh, you mean the group that we're funding in Syria? We've just taken the $10 million bounty off the head of one of their guys? Now they're going to attack us because we didn't pull the bounty off his head soon enough? I mean, come on. This is smacks of classic efforts to manipulate public opinion through fear in order to get you to embrace a narrative and go running with it.
Yeah. We actually talked about that earlier today with on our previous show about the Russia-Ukraine war. A lot of that going on in the West. But okay, so that's the first two issues. The people that were taken off of the security clearance for the Hunter laptop Biden issue and the issue with John Bolton. So are those good, bad, or ugly from Trump's perspective?
Oh, good. Very good.
All right. So those are good. All right. Moving on to the next one here. Trump calls Xi Jinping. It says Trump spoke with his Chinese counterpart on Friday and actually was talking about, that it was a very good call that Trump said that he wants to solve lots of problems with China. But then there's also issues of, is he going to use lots of tariffs on China? Is he going to do other things? Is he going to continue to strengthen Taiwan, et cetera? So how do you see this part playing out? And is this good or bad?
Well, there's good and let's call it good and ugly. So,
oh boy,
yeah. So
we're just going to bypass bad and go straight to ugly. Okay.
Yeah. So the good part is that Trump's reaching out to Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping's taking the call, and in fact, Xi Jinping and Putin had a conversation, video teleconference. It lasted about 95 minutes. 4 or 5 hours after Trump's Oval Office impromptu press conference on Monday evening, and both they were sharing back and forth. Hey, and she said, "Yeah, I talked to Trump. Trump had contacted me in December. We went ahead and we had this discussion, and he said he wants to talk things out. So that was positive." And Putin indicated, "Yeah, I want to talk to him." So that's the good news. Trump is back into the communications world, and you got to separate Trump from his bombastic public bullying, threatening posture to what Trump is actually like when he's on the phone, he's face to face, he's trying to work the art of the deal. Therefore, he's not a bombast or a bully at that point. He actually is a gentleman, and he tries to, and he's congenial. And you didn't hear both Xi and Putin, the respective governments, put out readouts on those conversations very quickly, and neither of them were saying, "That Trump, he's a nasty old SOB, and God, we hate talking to him." No, they were very upbeat about talking to him. So that's the good news. The ugly part, though, is Trump is locked. He hasn't caught up to today, to the what's happening currently. He made a comment the other day about, China's not, they're dissing our automobile industry and they're not selling our cars. Duh, catch on. What has happened over the last 4 or 5 years is previously General Motors and Ford were two of the biggest sellers of automobiles in China. They had significant portions of the Chinese market. Chinese finally woke up and said, "Wait a second. We don't have to rely on these foreign car manufacturers. We'll make our own cars. And we'll make a lot of electric vehicles." So they started making their automobiles. And I tell you what, these automobiles look like they were produced by one of those TV shows, called Pimp My Ride. They'd go get a car, man, they'd trick it out with cameras and television screens and stereo and lights. The Chinese are building some amazing automobiles, and they're cheap. Cheap labor in China. But the point is, they haven't yet been allowed to compete in the United States. Trump is going to insist, you got to let our automobile manufacturers come in there and compete. And see the Chinese say, great, let ours into the United States too, quid pro quo. And, so the art of the deal and that kabuki dance is going to start. But that was one of sort of the ugly moments that Trump still thinks he can charm his way out of this with the Chinese. And the fact that after he made those statements in the Oval Office to the press corps, that within 5 hours, Xi and Putin, they're sitting down saying, "Hey, let's coordinate, let's share information back and forth. This is what he said to me. This is what he said to you. And this is going to destroy the notion that this Chinese-Russian relationship is ephemeral. This is not a one-night stand. These people have basically taken an oath of marriage. They're in for a long-term relationship."
All right. So, is there room for Trump to have a cooperative relationship with Xi? We'll stick to this one topic here about the auto industry. Is there anything he can do within his power as president to make the U.S. automobile industry more competitive so that it can get into the Chinese market, that it can be making products that are beneficial and cost effective in the Chinese market, and to have more options coming in too, so that it's a win-win? Is that even possible?
No. The Chinese have eaten our lunch on this. I mean, if this was a car race, our car's still at the starting line. We can't get it started. And they've already made 2 laps. And so, but we've got to look at this also in the broader context. So the United States is continuing to try to, we think we can sanction our way out of this. We think we're so big and powerful, we control so much, we're gonna hit these people. That'll make them think twice. And that's one of the reasons Trump is going after China and the Panama Canal. The whole Panama Canal issue is all about China, because the Chinese, there are 3 major container ports at the north end of the Panama Canal in the Cologne Free Trade Zone. There's one major container port, I think it's called Balboa, down at the south end. The Chinese have management contracts for those container ports. Now, they don't control the Panama Canal.
Yeah. I want to interject here for our audience who may not know. I actually went to Panama a year and a half or so ago and went to the canal and went to these very ports that we're talking about here. And when you look back at the history of this, so we handed over, I believe it was 1997, to the Panamanian government, and they contracted 2 Hong Kong companies, or maybe it was 1 Hong Kong company, to work some of these locks here. They have been operating without change ever since that time, i.e. There's nothing new that has happened that makes us suddenly go, oh, China's controlling this. It's a company. It's not the Chinese military. The Panamanian government has had, still has, and will continue to have control over those locks. So if that's the actual issue, the truth on the ground, what has got Trump all spun up, and what does he intend to do with it?
Yeah, I think he's using that as leverage in his attempts to negotiate with China and to work a deal with them. That's going to be one of the issues on the table. But as you correctly note, Danny, I mean, I started going there actively in 1999, 2000. I was doing product counterfeiting investigations, money laundering investigations. So I worked extensively in the Cologne Free Trade Zone. And we also did compliance programs for casinos. That was particularly funny because those casinos, man, they make their money off of the Chinese. The Chinese are in there. They love to play baccarat. I mean, I don't know what it is about the Chinese, but you give them a choice between roulette, blackjack, poker, baccarat, man, they're all on the baccarat table. So, that's been going on for 26 years. And it does raise the question, this was the case. Chinese presence, control of those ports, providing management support for the canal. That was the case back when Trump was president in the first term. At no point over the last 25 years, to my knowledge, have the Panamanians or the Chinese said to the United States, no, your ship can't come through here. Or have they said, oh, you're a U.S. ship? Oh, you got to pay twice the tariff as everybody else. None of that's happened. Right. Everybody, whatever your ship is, you pay the same price coming through. And so this is Trump creating an issue that has nothing really to do with Panama's operation of the canal or, quote, Panama ripping us off. They haven't ripped us off. This is about going after China and the fact that what Trump is now realizing, the Chinese have significant influence over that waterway. Now you can make a big argument about how relevant and critical naval forces are anymore in light of the development of hypersonic missiles.
Right. Or naval drones. You can add that in there too.
Yeah.
The Black Sea Fleet about that. But so here's the question though, is whatever his intent may be, is this going to create any positive leverage for him to get something somewhere else? Because I don't know what he has to give, because unless he, oddly enough, he did make that comment in his opening day, in his inauguration speech, that we're going to, quote, take it back, the Panama Canal. So he didn't explain what that meant. But I mean, it would be a major international event if he, in any category, went and did that. What is there to gain for the United States by this whole move?
Nothing to gain except bragging rights and to say, oh yeah, see, we're still the big dog on the street. This
specifically, I mean, will this provide some sort of leverage for Trump to get something from China elsewhere?
No, I don't believe it would, because what it will create the possibility is if the United States really did take back that canal and try to get control of it, it could be easily sabotaged and, close it down. Basically, if you've taken it from Panama and Panama's not making money off of it, they'll shut it down. It'd be easy to shut down. It's too vulnerable. When I started going to Panama, you still had significant military presence at bases that were both in Panama City and up in Cologne. And it was it was one of those things that you had military police patrolling the strip clubs that were all throughout Panama City, because to make sure that U.S. troops weren't getting ripped off in the strip clubs. Okay, that was the nature of the U.S. relationship back then. The Panamanians aren't looking for that to come back. So this is
okay. So Panama Canal, good, bad, or ugly?
Yeah, I think that's bad and ugly.
Okay, that maybe get both. All right, moving on to the next one. Hopefully things will start getting better here. Trump has said he wants to talk to Vladimir Putin about having a negotiated settlement with the Russia-Ukraine war. Here's one of the things he recently said.
How long do you think it would take to end that conflict? And
I have to speak to President Putin. We're going to have to find out. He can't be thrilled. He's not doing so well. I mean, he's grinding it out, but most people thought that war would have been over in about 1 week. And now you're into 3 years, right? So he can't be thrilled. It's not making him look very good. Now, eventually, it's a big machine, so things will happen. But I think he'd be very well off to end that war. We have numbers that almost 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed. About 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are killed. Russia's bigger, they have more soldiers to lose. But that's no way to run a country.
So let's look at a number of things you said there.
Yeah.
First of all, let's take a look at one of the last things you said was that Russia has suffered over 1 million killed and wounded. Actually, I think you said 700,000 killed or something like that. 300,000 irretrievable losses for a total of 1 million is what his administration is reporting.
Yeah.
True or false?
It's a lie. It's false. That is generated by the CIA. How do I know that? David Ignatius just wrote a piece and with I call it the hagiography of Bill Burns. And Bill Burns in that article specifically uses that 700,000 plus number. That's how we know the CIA is telling Donald Trump this. Trump is relying upon CIA fabrications. Total fabrication. It's not true. It is a lie. It's based upon taking numbers that are being given to the CIA by the Ukrainians, and these CIA analysts, they're morons, because if they take that crap at face value, they don't push back, they don't do any kind of independent analysis, and then they're facilitating a deception. And so Trump's being given bad information. And within that bad information, he's being told that also the economy's suffering in Russia. No, it's not. Russia is experiencing some inflation, but it's not inflation generated like the United States, where we're printing money like there's no tomorrow, and we don't have the backing, the economic industrial backbone to back it up. And yet Russia's in a completely different camp. So on both points, this is the ugly part, and this is the bad part as well. Trump is being given false information, and he repeated that. I call it the Milley meme. So General Milley had emphasized that, Russia failed because they wanted to conquer Kiev in 3 days or a week, and they didn't do it. So this was a failure on Russia's part. Again, utter nonsense. Russia's initial invasion of Ukraine was 135 to 170,000 soldiers. That is nowhere near the size of force, because they were going up against a 700,000 man Ukrainian army at the time, outnumbered. The normal ratio is the attacking force needs to have 3 times the size of the defending force in order to prevail. Russia was not trying to conquer all of Ukraine, but that's another lie that's been presented. So here's Trump repeating that lie. He's repeating the lie about casualties. He's repeating the lie about the suffering economy. So I think he genuinely believes, man.
Right. I was going to say that's the risk, and maybe what makes it ugly, not necessarily from his perspective, as though he's being the ugly, but that he is the victim, if you want to look at it that way, of misinformation from the inside.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you got a dark cave up there, and I say, "Oh, go inside. There's nothing in there." You go in and find 2 sleeping hungry bears. Whoops. Maybe my promise that there was nothing in there wasn't worth relying on. And what they positioned Trump to do now is to go try to make demands of Putin. And Putin's going to say, that's not true. You are badly misinformed, Mr. President. And when you get your information straight, and when you have straight information, come back and we can talk.
And so let's kind of stick on this theme for a second here. So that was what Trump is saying. Here's what President Volodymyr Zelensky is saying about troop numbers.
If there are no strong security guarantees, no NATO, no military contingent deployed, no long-range weaponry, how do you think, if Putin comes back, he will definitely come back with the army 10 times more than the grouping he had in the very beginning of 2022, because it is already almost 4.5 times more than it was. And when he comes back with this grouping for the full occupation of the countries that are former republics of the USSR, that is number 1, and then he will do what he has done with our Crimea. He will be coming to other EU and NATO countries to stand there, to issue those ultimatums, to make demands to the countries. He will be bringing us and you, everybody, to the world that lives in his head. This is what will be happening in case there are no strong security guarantees.
Okay, let's look at a couple of different things here. Let's first of all look at it. I think that there probably is some truth to the numbers of the troops that the Russians have right now. Let's look at that part first. Is Russia 4 times bigger inside Ukraine than it was in February 2022?
Oh, dramatically so. Let me give you the actual numbers. It wasn't quite clear there, but in other parts of his speech, he made these numbers clear. So basically, he stated that Russia started in 2022 with 250,000 people. He then claims that Ukraine has killed 800,000 Russians. So in other words, killed, that initial attacking force killed 3 times that number. But now here's the kicker, that Russia now has 1.25 million soldiers. You know what? I think Volodymyr Zelensky is math challenged. He has trouble with simple addition and subtraction. The fact of the matter is that the Russian numbers during the first 8 months of that special military operation hovered around 150 to 170,000. That's why when the Ukrainians launched their counteroffensive in September of 2022, that the Russians simply did not have the manpower mobilized at that point, because up to then they had really calculated that they'd be able to reach a negotiated settlement, and they almost did, were it not for Western interference. That's when Russia kicked in its mobilization program and began. They first called up 300,000 reserves. So it's not like they had to go out and take some brand new untrained recruits. They had guys that had prior military service. They were activated, given a quick refresher, pushed out on the line. And then from that point on, it's changed its offensive operations. Throughout this entire period, from October of 2022 until today, Russia has enjoyed an advantage of 8 to 10 to 1 with artillery shells being fired, just alone. Not to mention a similar superiority on the drone front. And so whenever you have that kind of decisive advantage with both armor, with artillery, with drones, and with manpower, fixed-wing aircraft, the casualties that are being suffered on the Ukrainian side dwarf what Russia has incurred. The best estimate I've seen and it's based upon a work by actually a British group that are not in any way considered pro-Russian, is about 100,000 Russians are now dead. Russian soldiers have died in this. It's not an inconsequential amount. I'm not trying to minimize
That's
it.
huge. Yeah.
But it's not a million.
By comparison, that's how many the United States lost in World War One. A
Yeah,
country as
yeah.
big as we are against this, and that's how many Russia has suffered here. So that's a big number by itself. But in comparison to Ukraine, they have literally suffered more casualties Ukraine has than the United States in World Wars I and II combined, and that is a staggering figure.
Of course, another way to look at it, Danny, that's 6 years of body counts in Chicago for murders.
Okay, that's pretty. That's scary on a different reason.
Yeah. Just to
definitely
put
ugly to throw that in as a bonus.
and again, I put that into context because look here in the United States, we go about our daily lives with not even giving it a second thought when we've got thousands of people, tens of thousands of people dying from fentanyl overdoses, that die in automobile accidents, and that die in murders in the big cities. When you total up the murders that are taking place in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in New York City, in Baltimore, in Atlanta, in Oakland, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, you know what? We rapidly get up over 30,000 a year, and we're not going, oh my God, we got to stop. So yeah, Russia suffered 100,000 casualties over 100,000 KIA over 3 years. Not the end of the world. It is. They regret it. They honor that dead. They mourn their losses. But this is about an existential fight.
Yeah.
And that's what we fail to grasp here. And that Ukraine is being used as cannon fodder by the West.
Right.
Cynically so.
Now, I want to peg off that or deflect off of that. So Zelensky is challenged with math, as you just said. You gave us what is almost certainly ballpark figure. No one knows for sure, but those are probably pretty close to being accurate on both sides by independent analysts that I've seen.
Right.
What about the policy and the future intentions that Zelensky talked about in the second part of that clip there, where he said that Russia is going to build up to 10 times the number what they had in February 22, which again, from independent analysts I've seen is plausible. They may do that, but he says so that they can come rolling down the same thing that they did to Ukraine in 2022. They're going to start doing to the Baltics and several of these other countries. Yeah. How do you see that?
Yeah, no, that's a lie. Russia, number one, Russia's already built up 10 times to what it was in 2022. Okay. So it's already at that number. And it is already creating reserve armies out of a contingency planning by their joint staff, by their general staff, the Stavka, because they anticipate that the possibility of a U.S. NATO attack on them. So they're not sitting back. We're going to wait and see. They're prepping for that. But Russia is not going to invade Europe. They don't need all the.
By the way, let me just interrupt you for just a second here, because there's one other thing that Zelensky said in the midst of all this, that quite long speech there at the Davos, which I thought was very interesting and not good from our side. And he said, listen, right now, Ukraine is the biggest land army on all of Europe other than Russia. And then he cited correctly, he said that the next three biggest ones are France, UK, and Germany, none of which are over 200,000, and they don't have any real combat experience at all. So
Correct.
When you look at it like that, yeah, NATO is not really that strong, even though they have 32 countries. When you're talking about the troops and their capacities and their industrial capacity to sustain war, it's not that high.
Yeah, well, in fact, that's why we kept adding countries to NATO, because we needed to add countries so we would maintain manpower levels that we thought would be necessary, because we were not able to sustain and generate those levels on our own. So it's a big grift. It's a scam. And
sorry, go ahead.
No. I said, and we've got to recognize that we're being bamboozled.
So how's about this? What do you say instead of doing what the British, the chief of their armed forces, General Elvis, I think his name is, said a couple of days ago. I know, I'm not making that up. It actually is.
Sorry.
Anyway, he's saying, we have, and some of the, I've seen the German generals saying the same thing recently. We need to start building up our forces because within 8 to 10 years, we could be fighting on the ground against Russia. So first of all, it's like, okay, how's about instead of like saying there's going to be a future war, so let's start building up forces to get ready for it, we start talking about maybe diplomacy.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, now I want you to comment on what I'm about to show you afterwards. Is this just Vladimir Putin just saying whatever he wants so that he can secretly connive a way to be able to conquer all of Europe because he wants to recreate the Soviet Union? Or is he actually being honest and, hey, if we just engage with them in a rational diplomatic pace, we might be able to solve this so there's no war from anybody in the next 8 to 10 years? Check this out.
What we need is not just a ceasefire. We need peace, a long-lasting peace.
We don't have any preconditions for talks. We are ready to engage in a conversation without preconditions. But there has to be a basis of something that we've agreed upon during the talks in Istanbul in late 2022. And based, of course, on the realities on the ground at this moment.
So is he genuinely want to reach a peace settlement, or is he just trying to bamboozle us so that he can conquer us?
No, I think he's genuine. I mean, I've heard it. I've heard the same sentiments directly from the deputy foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Rybkov. We've heard it repeatedly from Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister. This Western mythology about Russian aggression, Russian attempts to, quote, recreate the empire. It's like, okay, can we stop with this empire crap? The only countries in the world that have been building global empires are the United States, France, and the great United Kingdom, Great Britain. That's it. You don't see China going out, establishing military bases, installing governments, running covert actions to subvert the democratic electoral processes in other countries. Chinese aren't doing that. Russians aren't doing that. We're doing it. God, we turn every minute. We see it. We've done it. We tried it in Romania. We're trying it in Armenia. We're trying it in Georgia. We don't stop. This country, the United States, is out of control on that front. We've become addicted to covert action, and it's all about our wanting to control. And then Trump comes in and goes, we're going to take Panama, we're going to take Greenland. And it just reinforces this attitude. Whereas, why do you have to fight him? Why you're insisting right away there's nothing to be discussed? Russia's been very upfront and direct and clear about what it wanted. It said, hey, take those missile bases that you're putting on our borders and withdraw them. And Putin had an agreement from Joe Biden in December of 2021 to do that very thing. And yet in January, when Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, sat down with that creep, Antony Blinken, to solidify that agreement, Blinken basically said, no, Biden didn't know what he's talking about. He didn't mean that. No, we're going to do whatever we want. You can go screw yourselves. Russia said, okay. Next stop, special military operation. This is provoked by the United States. There's no other way to look at it.
By the way, I don't know if you saw the New York Times toward the end of last week came out with a piece that said that, as you and I have talked about on our show, I believe before, that there was, other than the Istanbul opportunity, which was the best chance to end the war, which ironically had a provision that after everything had been accomplished, the Russian military would have withdrawn back to its own side there, ostensibly leaving the Kiev in charge of everything. But we'll talk about that later. But the next biggest one came in November of 2022 when Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said this is the best time, for the reasons you just mentioned a second ago, about how Russia had suffered two pretty meaningful battlefield setbacks and losses in battles in Kherson and Kharkiv Oblast. Milley came out and said, this is the best time because Russia's hurting and the Euroside's on the up and up. This is a good time for negotiated settlement. We now know, and I didn't know this before, I didn't even heard rumors to this effect, but the New York Times is reporting that actually Blinken himself undermined this. He's the one that said no, and said, no, we're going to continue fighting. We're going to get ready for this offensive in 2023. And that is, I think, one of the biggest condemnations of Blinken's leadership that you can have.
Sorry about that. Again, this
But no, so that the point being that's you talk about what Blinken has done. I mean, that once I think all this dust has settled from once this thing's finally resolved, the people are going to go back and go, you had a chance to end the war in 2022. Your chairman of your Joint Chiefs of Staff said, yes, this is the time to do it. And your alleged senior diplomat overrode the general who was advocating peace. And instead we have, God only knows how many hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died since that time.
Yeah, I think there's an element of truth to that story. But you also can't rule out that this is part of what you'd call image repair by Milley. You know, Milley trying to put himself in the most favorable light, recognizing that, the party's over as far as Ukraine is concerned, and there's going to be a blame game going around. So he's getting out front to say, hey, I'm not the blame. It wasn't my fault. I tried to stop this thing. Now, he didn't really, because all along he continued to go along with the decisions. You know what? If he really genuinely believed it was a bad choice, he could have resigned in protest. You know what? This is unconscionable. I'm not going to stand for this. I put my reputation on the line. Oh my God, him? You know, one of his monthly orders was chapstick. He had to have enough chapstick so he could make sure he could kiss all the ass he could get access to in Washington. All right? And that's what Milley is. You know, he is, and this is not to excuse Blinken. I have no doubt that Blinken, overrode him perhaps. But Milley to try to present, oh man, I was just standing, this was awful, and oh my God, how did this happen? Please.
Right. Okay, so I think we can qualify that one. That's ugly.
Ugly, very ugly.
Fully in the ugly, not even bad. In the last few minutes we have here, what can Trump do on the good side, given all of these realities we just talking about, and the roadblocks and the difficulties to peace, both inside and outside of the Western Bloc, quite frankly? What can he do, given all these realities, to get this Russia-Ukraine war off the table?
I would counsel do no harm. What he needs to do, and actually, I was thinking about it. I think he did it. I'm not sure whether he was conscious or unconscious. But remember, he ordered a freeze on all foreign aid for 90 days. I didn't see anything in that executive order that said except Ukraine. So that means aid to Ukraine's frozen for 90 days.
I've seen the media say that it's accepted, but I haven't seen anything from the administration saying it's accepted. Well,
it was in one of the executive orders. One of the executive orders that Trump issued said, all foreign aid is shut off for the next 90 days until we have a chance to figure out what's going on. I think that includes Ukraine. And it may actually include Israel too. That's an interesting part. But so cutting off that aid is one thing. We got sort of indirect confirmation of that yesterday from other reporting out of the Pentagon that all of the people who were the prime movers in shifting aid and sending weapons to Ukraine, they're now out the door. They're no longer on the job. They've been removed. So Trump may have already done a positive in that regards of really putting pressure on Ukraine. Zelensky's appearance at the World Economic Forum didn't do Zelensky any favors in terms of endearing him to Donald Trump. He's just upping himself on the hit list, in my view, that his days are numbered. So
that's what we thought too.
But Trump, Trump in his recent statement, he's still sort of in the bad and ugly category with respect to Russia, where he's saying, we're going to tell you what the deal is, and you accept it or else. And Russia's basically going to say politely, they're going to say politely, screw you. You're not going to bully us anymore. You're not going to boss us around. You're not going to threaten us. We're driving this chart. We are doing what we're going to do to protect our country, just as you would. And to that extent, once Trump comes to understand that, then he'll be able to negotiate with Putin. Until he reaches that point of understanding that message, the negotiations aren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, and I hope that he does that. I hope he's willing to. I actually did a show with Tucker Carlson. We recorded it last week anyway. It still hasn't aired yet. But one of the things he said in that really stood out to me, Tucker did, when we were talking about this very aspect, he said, listen, I know that it will be a shock to the institutions in the West right now. They'll be shocked if Trump comes in and negotiates something to end the war that doesn't end up good for Kiev, et cetera. And he said, but that's just what has to happen. He goes, Trump should just ignore them. They didn't vote for him anyway. And the people who did vote for him want him to do that. So it'll be a firestorm, but he should just say whatever. So I hope that that's exactly what Trump does.
Well, let's end on, the really good news about Trump in this time as president. In 2017, he came in completely unprepared. Completely. He didn't have top tier officials selected, much less second, third tier officials selected to go in and take over the bureaucracy. He was basically a hostage to that bureaucracy, and they ran circles around him. They thwarted his policies at every step. Not this time. The boy came ready to play ball. He showed up,
especially with his big pen.
Yeah,
all those executive orders.
He showed up. They had crafted these executive orders. They knew that there's going to be a legal pushback, but all of a sudden they hit these lawyers with a tsunami, an absolute tsunami of executive orders. Now you go through those orders. I think some are really good. There's some ugly ones in there. There's some bad ones, but across the board, what he was doing was taking control, showing that he was prepared this time. Yeah. And he not only had his tier 1 group ready to go, he had tiers 2 and 3 already selected. They had vetted him. They had talked to him, and they made sure that they've got people that are going to be loyal to him. So I said, whether you like Trump or hate Trump, give the man credit. Yeah. He learned from the first term. He's come ready to play. He understands what the game is now. The first time, he showed up thinking, oh, I hear we're playing badminton. And no, it was full on rugby. After he got his ass tackled a couple of times on the field, he goes, I think I better gear up and prepare to play the proper game next time. And he did.
I think he did, yeah. And we'll continue to see how it works out. We see that whole, you can go to sonar21.com where you can read some of the stuff that Larry's been talking about here. He's got a whole list of a lot of those executive orders that are listed on this site there. Certainly recommend you guys do that. As always, Larry, thanks for coming on today and giving your view on some of these things, especially, I didn't even know that you had some personal knowledge about the whole Hunter Biden laptop issue there. Yeah. That was fascinating. So good to hear that, and appreciate you sharing that on the air here today.
Yeah, you're most welcome, and thank you for having me.
Always our pleasure, and always our pleasure to have you guys on as well. Also, to let you know that we're on podcasting now, and because I know a lot of folks, they can't watch videos, but they do like podcasts, and some people actually prefer podcasts. And so, by all means, share this with your friends. They can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict. Just type in Daniel Davis Deep Dive, and you'll find us waiting there for you or your friends. Thank you very much. Be sure and like and subscribe if you haven't done that on your way out, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.